Hello, one and all, and welcome to another episode of Baggers Chat. My name is Mitch Pattinson, and we're always joined by Ethan Daffy. And today we are previewing a semi-final. We mentioned it last week how we were a little bit, ramble, like a little bit uncomfortable because we were previewing an elimination final. This week we are previewing a semi-final. So, of course, we're coming up against the Melbourne Demons. Friday, 7:50. The times were confirmed a couple of days ago. So, tickets released today. Of course, we're recording this on a Monday night. We'll release this tomorrow, Tuesday night at 6 p.m. But of course, the tickets were released today. Hoping all Blue supporters out there. I know that not all Blue supporters can get a ticket, but hopefully most of you got a ticket. But first things first, Daffy boy, how are you?
I'm good, mate. I locked in my ticket this morning, which was good. I was a little bit on edge last night about the tickets. I was like, just get me a good ticket and get me a ticket as a whole. I know a few people who are missing out on tickets. They went pretty fast, especially after 10 a.m. So hopefully everyone, like you said, got a ticket. It's a big game and you don't want to be missing it. So I'm like you said, we were very uncomfortable with elimination final. I'm comfortable with a semi-final. I know it's a different territory to be in, and you're 2 wins off a grand final, which sounds really, really weird, but we're close, and why not? Why not? We've been saying it for weeks. Why not us? So, I'm keen, Patto, and it should be a good clash against a team that's. I feel like we match up really well against Melbourne. It's shown in the last probably 3 games we've played against them. Probably a bar the first one this year was just a bit of a poo off. It was 2 teams playing like crap, but. The last game, obviously the win, and then the round 22 last year was a cracking game as well. So semi-final, I think the AFL will be licking its lips.
Yeah, I think they have to be, just because it's too. Carlton's a big Melbourne club. Melbourne should be a little bit bigger than what they are. And I think so. Of course, the tickets are sold out today for the game, but. Hopefully, a lot of the Melbourne supporters kind of got around it because, they obviously had the opportunity of being the home team. They get a large percentage of home tickets because it's a home final. But if it was the other way around where we would have it sold out within a heartbeat and we wouldn't even have to worry about it because Carlton supporters show up every single week. It doesn't matter if we're home or away. And you watch, I reckon if we get through this week against the D's and we travel to Brisbane, a lot of Blue supporters would try their absolute best to get down to the Gabba in a couple of weeks' time. But of course, we're going to try and focus on the semi-final this week. Can't look too far ahead. But we're going to get straight into it, Duffy boy. And of course, we'll start off with some news. No new, updated news. But I think the players that we were kind of expecting to miss have been confirmed. So, of course, Harry McKay is out with concussion after he entered concussion protocols a few days ago, of course, after the game. And also Jack Martin has been given a 2-game suspension, but that's not confirmed just yet because we are, of course, challenging the Martin suspension. Not too sure exactly when we find out. I'm sure you'll know some more news, Daffy boy, than I do. But Harry McKay and Jack Martin, mate, quick word about these two and more on Jack Martin. Is he a chance to get off?
Yeah, first of all, Harry, bit of a shame, bit of a weird situation, that one. He didn't really cop it to the head in the hit. It was actually, he kind of copped it in the chest more. Everyone's talking about how, they're not sure how he actually got knocked out, but he clearly was dazed. And you could see when we were singing the song, he was in the circle and he looked like he probably thought he didn't know where the hell he was. So hopefully he's better now and, has a week off, and hopefully we're playing next week so we can come back in. But on the Jack Martin one, it's frustrating. It is frustrating. He's put together a massive block of form in the last, 12 weeks, 13 weeks. And tomorrow night, I think 6 p.m. after the Maynard verdict, which might be about 7 hours, Jack Martin's challenge will be after that. I'd imagine we'd get it down to 1. That's my thinking. I think we'll get it down to 1. I think it should have been 1 in the first place. But you don't know with our lawyers, Patto, we might pull off a 0. But I doubt it. I doubt it this time, just due to the kind of careless nature of it. But so I read something on Twitter today that imagine if Maynard keeps the 3, which I think which could happen. I think it seriously could happen, and he could miss the grand final, and then Jack Martin gets off. Imagine the uproar in the Collingwood social media space. That would be one thing I hope happens.
And I guess to touch on Harry Mackay as well, I think it was quite, I said, it was quite in you kind of have to work out how he actually was concussed. But as you said, through the team song, it was actually very. I don't know if it was just because he was kind of concerned because he didn't play probably as great as he probably would have wanted to, but I still think his impact was quite good, let alone his scoring shots. But I think his impact was quite good. But also to touch on Jack Martin, I wasn't too sure if they would just spend the one day where Maynard have the night where, because it's such a complicated sort of case to work on, whether Maynard was in the air and whether he was in a vulnerable position where he can't control, or because he hit the head, he's out for 3 weeks. So it's one thing where I didn't know if Martin would be delayed because it's such a big case. But hopefully we find out an answer tomorrow, because with these sorts of cases, these difficult ones, you don't know how they're going to play out. But I think I agree with you. I think Martin, I think it's going to be 1. If anything, I don't want it to be 2. I don't think it deserves to be 2. I know it's a strike at the head, but you can kind of. I think the lawyers have something to play with there, because the ball was in the area where Martin was actually striking it. So I think it's a tough one, but I in my opinion, I think I wouldn't be surprised if he gets off completely, because yes, it was a strike to the head, but it helps that Blakey play the rest of the game. He's not concussed, so that helps us. But I don't know. I have a good feel. I mean, I don't think he will get off, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does play this week against the D's. But we'll now move into the potential inclusions. So of course I think our ins and outs will kind of be off Mackay and Martin both not playing. Of course, Mackay won't be playing, but my ins and outs are off Martin not playing either, trying to find another solution without him playing. But of course, Jack Silvani is now fit, so he's fit and firing and back from injury, so he should come back in. We aren't too sure if he was going to come back in anyway with Harry Mackay in the side, but now that Harry Mackay is out, I think Sauce has to be the switch straight away. Jesse Motlop, a big chance to be in the best 22 if Jack Martin isn't featured on Friday night. And also just to touch on a few names, Matt Candy, Ollie Holland, Zach Fisher, and Paddy Dow were all notable absentees last Friday. So whether those guys come back in, I'm not too sure. But Daffy Boy, on these, I guess, in potential inclusions before we transition to the ins and outs, what's your thoughts on these names?
Yeah, there's a lot of names there that could definitely, play a part in a final. And the first one for me really excites me because I think his form before he got injured was almost career best form. And, he was playing that kind of ruck forward role. And, I'm obviously talking about Sauce there. And I'd love to see him just playing that forward 50 and almost play deep at times. Him and Charlie can work in tandem together, I think, really well. They can both go high up the ground. They can both go deep and kick goals. So it's an important in for me. I think if he wasn't available, then they could really, the Melbourne defence could really turn their eyes to just Charlie, which I think they will anyway. But I think it's just another bloke they have to worry about in the forward line, which is good for us. Jesse Motlop, obviously a chance. I think he's pretty much a lock to come in. Depends how they feel like. Do they want to go small? I'm not sure. I think he has to come in for me. And also Matt Kennedy, Hollands, Fisher, and Paddy Dow might all be a bit stiff, but one of them will definitely be the sub, in my opinion. So it's going to be interesting, Matt.
Yep. So you touched on there about the subs. So we're now transitioning straight into the ins and outs. Who are you bringing in and who are you bringing out? And also make sure to name your sub, because it's a big conversation now.
Yeah. So obviously my outs are Harry and Jack Martin, just due to force changes. There's no omissions, which is great. In a finals campaign, you're not really wanting to drop blokes, but forced changes have happened. And for me, I've got Jesse Motlop being elevated from the sub, and Jack Silvani coming in to play his first ever final, which is exciting. And my sub will be Paddy Dow. I think we need midfield power against a team like Melbourne, and if Paddy can come on in the second half or like the last quarter and provide some run, it could be massive. And I think he was really good against them last time. He provides something different, Paddy. For me, I think he definitely good enough to be best 22 in my opinion. Like it's frustrating for him personally, but when he was in the side, I think he provides a different kind of, I don't know, he's fast and he's hard to match up on because he's kind of like that guy. He's like Scott Pendlebury a little bit in terms of he can't be caught the way he moves his hips and the way he moves. You know what I mean? It's just like he's very silky in that kind of sense and drives the ball forward. And he clearly developed his game in terms of he isn't just dump kicking it forward anymore. He's a bit more patient and using his time with the ball rather than rushing it. So, yeah, I think Paddy Dow will be the sub and a really good sub in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, I completely agree because Paddy Dow, I mean, he's 184 centimeters, and that's quite tall for a midfield. I mean, I now know that it's probably now in probably the past 5 or 10 years, midfielders have grown a lot in terms of size, and I think 184 centimeters is still quite tall for a midfielder. And I think you were spot on there about how he's quite agile. Like he's a bit like a Zach Fisher where he zips around players. And he does have that burst away speed where if he gets the chance, he can kind of push off his opponent. A bit like Jordan Ngoe as well. And that's why I think Paddy Dow, I think it would be a good sub, and I do agree, but I'll give you a bit of a sneak peek. My sub is a little bit different. So I'll touch on my ins and outs, and they're the exact same as yours. I think Jack Martin and Harry Mackay, if they're both, I mean, Mackay will definitely miss, but Martin, if he is out, they're both straight out. No other outs, though, for me for this week. But, of course, Jesse Motlop and Jack Silvani are in for mine. But my sub is Zach Fisher.
Yeah.
So, okay. And I wouldn't mind Fish just playing. And I do like I don't mind either way, whether it's Paddy Dow or Zach Fisher. I think they're probably the two options. But if Zach Fisher does play, you know that he has a few roles that he can produce, whether he plays in the halfback flank where he's kind of been in the past maybe 5 weeks, but also if we kind of see him again where he once was in the half forward line, but also he could be a midfielder as well. So he could be that guy where in the fourth quarter, at 3/4 time, if Vossi wants to bring in some zip, you bring in Zach Fisher into the midfield, and that could be quite a different look for Melbourne as well. But so thoughts on Zachy Fisher as a sub, Daffy boy?
Yeah, I think the game's going to be too contested for him. I know he played the last game, but that was off half back. I do like the idea for sure. I like the idea for sure, but I think with Melbourne, there's just something about every time we play them, it's so contested. We're both contested, and both of our defenses, we're defense focused. I think, in my opinion, obviously we're good attacking as well, but I think both teams are, that's their strengths. I think defense and contest is their strength. So, yeah, I'm not having a go at it at all. I think if he is a sub, I'm not going to complain, but I think with the contest kind of based, really stoppage based, I think Paddy Dow's the guy for the job.
Yeah, and because it is a little bit like hopefully the weather kind of holds off. We don't know with nowadays, but yeah. So does that give you a different sort of perspective where last week you kind of wanted the contested balls in there, but now that the weather does look really good on Friday night, does that change your opinion, or do you think you just have to stick with the contested ball as Paddy Dow as a sub because Melbourne is such contested possessions focused?
Yeah, I don't think the weather changes it for mine. I think it was, I think Vossi proved on the weekend. I think he wasn't too phased about the weather, and he was picking what the best team was against Sydney. He wasn't worried, and the weather wasn't too bad actually. On Friday night, everyone was worried about it, but it wasn't really bad at all. It didn't rain much. I think it was just before half time and a little bit before the game. It wasn't really wet at all. So it's going to be 25 degrees on Friday. Yeah, so put your Carlton polos on and shorts and head down to MCG, mate.
You watch, mate. I think Jesse Motlop or Adam Sale will somehow find a way to put the long sleeves on. But we'll now move on to the ground overview. As we always do, we touch on the backline, midfield, ruck, and forward. But as we always do, we're going to touch on the backline first. And a bit of a highly anticipated matchup, and it's Adam Sard up against Cozzy Pickett. And I think it's the matchup where I think it probably should happen, but who knows whether you might put a Nick Newman to Cozzy Pickett or someone else, whether maybe Zach Fisher does play and go straight to Cozzy Pickett. I don't know, but I think this is the matchup, which is probably the most realistic from our point of view. And also, before I transition to you, Daffy Boy, who does Jacob Wiedering go to? But also Nick Newman, as we just touched on. So, of course, touch on Adam Sutton and Cozzy Pickett, if that's the matchup you think that's going to happen. But also added Jacob Wiedering and Nick Newman. Who do you think their opponents will be?
Yeah, it's interesting. Once again, we played them obviously 5-6 weeks ago, so it's really good to have a gauge from that game and see how it all worked, the matchups wise, all around the ground, not just in defence. But for me, I think Sardi goes to Pickett because I think he can work off him offensively. He can force him to defend. I think that's one part of Pickett's game that he definitely needs to work on in terms of, I'm not having a go at him at all, or I think he's a really good player when he's on, but I think defensively, he can kind of be found out a little bit if his opponent's working off him and working forward. So I think Sard's a perfect matchup, and Pickett's been out of form. He seriously has been. I think he's been up and down. I think he's the most, like, in terms of his high is higher than most other small forwards, but his low this season has been, really, really low. And I think on the weekend, he was okay in the first half, but wasn't too good in that second half. So it's really, we're not sure what Pickett is going to come on the weekend. So we've got to be prepared for the best one because, good players stand up in big games, and he's a premiership player at, what is he, 22 years old. So we can't just rely on him playing bad. We've got to play well on him. So, and answering your other question with Weeders, it's a tough one because the D's don't really know who they're going to play. And for me, I think Brodie Grundy's going to come in. Van Rooyen's out with a suspension, so they have to bring him in. I think they have to bring him in.
Yeah.
You got, I think, other options in the twos are probably Josh Shackey, who's, he's not going to come in for a final. He's played one game all year as the sub. So I'd imagine, he's not really in favour currently there. So it's going to be another talking point, and it's going to be a massive cloud over Brodie Grundy and what impact he can have. Could be his final game for the Melbourne Demons. So it's the media is going to be sparked up about that, but I think he'll come in. If he doesn't, I'm not sure what they're trying to do. I'm not really sure what they're trying to do because on the weekend they obviously had Fritsch and McDonald as 2 targets, and Fritsch struggled and McDonald was a little bit underdone in my opinion. I think he obviously hasn't played enough footy this year. So for me, I think they have to have a target in Brodie Grundy, but he played against us last time and didn't really have an impact. So I wouldn't mind him playing, and Wiedering can get the job done, in my opinion. Nick Newman's just Nick Newman. I think he, during the game, he can take on anyone. And I think Brody Kemp, for me, might go to Fritsch, and then Newman might go to someone else. You've also got Tom McDonald down there. So maybe Kemp goes to McDonald. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure they'll work it out pretty well. Newman can play on anyone, smalls, talls. And I imagine, for me, I think they'll give Petraka some more time forward. Obviously, in that second half of the season, he was playing more forward. And on the weekend against Collingwood, he had to go into the midfield because Brayshaw's out. So it's going to be interesting. There's more questions for the Ds, in my opinion. I know what we're going to get out of our forwards. But for them, they just don't know who the key guy is. I think Fritsch is the guy. He was a little bit off goal kicking wise on the weekend, but I think he'll be the focal point again for them.
Yep. And you touched on there again about how we don't know what Melbourne's going to do with their sort of matchups, whether it's the forward line, midfield. I think their back line's pretty structured, but their forward and midfield, you don't know what they're going to bring. From your point of view, does that worry you, or does that make you excited?
It's as I say every time we play Melbourne, I watch him every week. The old fella's a big Melbourne supporter, and I go to games with him a fair bit. And it can be good and bad for them, in my opinion. I think the unpredictability can be good because you're not sure who's going to stand up in the game. And but for me, I want consistency heading into a final. I want a consistent 22 heading into a final, and with Brayshaw coming out, who I think him being out is massive. He can play halfback, wing, midfield. He's involved in all chains going forward, and they didn't have him for 3/4 on the weekend, and that really showed. Their ball use going inside 50 cost them the game. It cost them the game, and We've just got to force them to do the same thing and dump kick forward, and because I think they'll change their mentality going forward. They'll be trying to go more pinpoint and more direct. So I think it's just up to the defenders and also the mids and our team defense as an 18-man defense, because I think there was a few times against the Swans they got out the back in transition. I think if we can cut those opportunities and force them to take tough shots or force them to kick it to a pack, I think that'll work in our favour, because I think our defence is kind of built for those situations.
Yeah, well, to also touch on Brayshaw, I don't know the exact stat, but I think he's played like 85 consecutive games or something. It's something like that, and which is nuts.
Yeah,
and
yes.
As soon as he went down, I think it was BT that was commentating, and as soon as he went down, they actually commented on they haven't played without Brayshaw for 85 games. What are they going to do? So it's a player that doesn't miss often, and he's had so many consecutive games where you see him every single week, and now he's not there. What do you do without him? So, as you said, maybe they might put a Petrarca there as a permanent midfielder because he has been shifted with half forward and midfield. Maybe it might be a completely different player, whether maybe like a Tom Sparrow might be that genuine midfielder, because they've got plenty of midfielders through there. That's the thing. They've got a Judd McVie who's played off the back pocket, but he could, when he gets a little bit older, I see him becoming a genuine midfielder. So there's a few players there that are probably due to the dominance of the Melbourne's midfield, they might get their genuine, I guess like their chance to play in that midfield. It might even be Cozzy Pickett, because Pickett's played a lot of midfield. I mean, he's been a small forward, but he's been that Tom Papley player that's transitioned through the midfield, and he's actually been quite solid. So to touch on also about Cozzy Pickett, so last game in the qualifying final for Pies against the Pies, he kicked 1 goal, 3, and he had 13 touches. So I think definitely he would be wanting to try and play a little bit better this week, and there's no bigger stage to do it in front of 95,000 at the MCG. But we'll now move on to the midfield, and we will touch on a bit of a different matchup. So we'll start off with Jack Viney, a veteran of Melbourne Football Club. I still reckon he's so good. I still reckon he's an absolute lock in that best 22. Up against Georgie Hewitt. So George Hewitt has had a bit of an interesting season because last year he was a permanent midfielder in that best 22, and this year he's been a little bit off, whether he's had some injuries or some luck in form. But I think when we've been playing our best this season, he's always been one of our best. So it just shows how important he is. But also to touch on Blake Acres, and it's a chance for him to back up once again, because he performed really well in the round 22 clash, as you've mentioned before. But he's coming up against two fantastic wingmen in Lockie Hunter and Ed Langdon. So to touch on the matchup, of course, Hewitt v Viney, but to touch on Acres as well, and whether you might see him dominate once again, Daffy Boy. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, me personally, I think Viney's been Melbourne's most consistent midfielder this year. I think he probably should have been All-Australian, and he would have been really, really close. He was obviously nominated. I think it could be career best season for me. I think he's really developed. I think at the start of his career, he was kind of like, he had the same toughness. He had all that, but he just didn't have that, I don't know, that poise and that, that class. And now he has that class, and it's really good to see. It adds another asset for their midfield if he's up and going. So like you said with Georgie, he's been, first half of the year was, injuries, and he had a hand injury, I believe, which set him back a few weeks. And then for me, I think he's a best 22 player. I think he has to play every week if he's fit. I think I love him. I seriously love him. I think his contested work really opens up the game for Walshy, Ches, and other guys running through there. So I think they're two kind of brute players, aren't they? So, and Georgie, I think, had 24 contested against them last time. So that was stupid, crazy numbers. And he was definitely our best that night, I think. One of our best, definitely. And, with Acres, I think you could add Cottrell to that conversation as well against two really good wingmen. And for me, I think they can get the job done. With those performances, those are top A+ performances in a final. They did on the weekend, and Hunter and Langdon were a little bit off against Collingwood. Their numbers might say otherwise, but their impact wasn't, that impact we know they can. Because I think Hunter and Langdon can hit the scoreboard too. And what did Cottrell and Akers do on the weekend? Hit the scoreboard, but also defend. They worked absolutely perfect. I think the wingman role is so unrewarded and not talked about much, but I think it should be, because I think they ultimately won us the game with their run and their defensive work and offensive work. And against these two mids, I think they can get the job done, but it won't be easy. They've got to really just keep pushing and pushing, and no Akers injury report, so that's good to see. So it looks like he's right to go. I think it was just soreness, so get a couple jabs in and he'll be right to go on Friday.
Yeah, Akers and Cottrell were absolutely massive last weekend, and also to credit Sam Doherty as well. I think he was like the other. He wasn't a genuine winger, but he was that Ollie Hollands role where he actually played really well. And it's so stiff because a guy like Ollie Hollands would be sure. I mean, he probably should be in our best 22, but he's just not, because our team right now is outperforming too well. And I think Cottrell is performing that little bit more as a winger than what Ollie Hollands was, and that's it's his first season. So I don't expect too much from him, but I think it's great that we've been crying out for 5 years for depth, and finally we've got a guy like Matt Kennedy who should be playing. He won't be playing, unfortunately. He just won't be playing. And I mean, there's plenty of players that realistically should have a role, but they just don't, because unfortunately in our best 22 right now, it's a little bit too good. So. But you touched on there about Collingwood, I guess, limiting the impact of Melbourne's wingers. I completely agree, because even when I was, were you there at the game?
Yes.
Yeah. So could you see a bit of a tag, not a tag, but with Sidebottom and Josh Dacos? Josh Dacos didn't play in terms of possessions. He didn't dominate. Yeah. No. But I still reckon his impact was so good because he kept a guy like Ed Langdon to very minimal impact. Did you see a little bit of a tag?
Yeah, you could say I don't think it was a tag. I think for me, with a winger, when you're trying to kind of minimize their impact, it's, you're not giving them 25 meters space. You're giving them 15, 10 meters teasing space.
Yeah.
And I think Hoskin Elliott was pretty good on the weekend as well. I think, he's hit and miss. He's a hit and miss type of player, in my opinion. But he kind of played his role to a T in terms of when they get a turnover, he's not focused on it. He's not focused on Langdon or Hunter. He's focused on getting the bloody ball and spreading. And once again, it's similar to the midfield and similar to Cozzy Pickett and similar to other guys. You focus on them defensively, but once that ball turns over, you make them hurt. You make them pay on the other end. Because Cottrell made Errol Gordon pay many opportunities on the weekend. Errol played well, but you look at your defensive work, and most of the time he's probably on that wing with Cotters. And what did Cotters do in the first half? He opened up the game offensively, kicked 2 goals. So, for me, I think it's being able to punish them the other way. I think defensively you can hold up against them. You can pick them up. Like you said, I guess you can tag in a sense. You keep an eye on them. But I think it's about working the other way, because once they get that in their head, if you kick a goal or set up a goal, they go, fuck, I've got to be positioned more defensively. I've got to be positioned more defensively. And then their offensive game is erased. So it's all mind games, I think, for wingmen, because positioning is crucial. If you're 10 meters off, 15 meters off a Langdon, he can push forward and kick goals. So it's going to be tough, but I think they can get it done. And 5 weeks ago, they did get it done, in my opinion.
Yeah. Are you seeing the same sort of role with Cottrell come on Friday night, when it does, of course, come on Friday night? Do you see his role the exact same as what it was on the game against Sydney? Because, of course, Errol Gordon is so good, and his damage, I guess his disposals are so damaging. Do you see on Friday night this week against Melbourne, do you see the same sort of role? Because, I mean, no disrespect to Hunter and Langdon, they're great runners, but in terms of ball use, I think Hunter's still quite good. But Gordon is that different type of class. Do you see a similar type of role from a Cottrell point of view?
I think he has to be. Because I think his work rate is it's got to be, it's top class. It is top line running power. So, yeah, I think the same role. And I love when he sometimes has his little stint up half forward. I love it. I love it. Like, if we heard him play on the wing, I would love him at half forward.
Yes.
That's the thing about him, because he can push high and he can create, the extra number at a contest, or, his pressure's good. He's just a good footballer, Matt Cottrell. And, I love him on the wing, obviously. But, I love those little stints where they don't know what to do when he's at half forward, because he can kind of almost become an extra winger when he's at half forward. He can push high and also kick goals. And if he kicks a couple more goals on Friday night, I can see us winning the game, because he opens it up. He's a different type of, Cripps can kick goals, Walsh and Chera can kick goals. But I feel like when those, those role players kick goals and vital goals, it just gives the team a, breath of fresh air in a sense. And it really, like, as Melbourne, you go, Jesus, we've got to look at him now. And that opens up the game for Cripps and other guys like that. So it's exciting, Patto, because we've got, guys who can get the job done in every position on the ground.
Yeah, because once again, we didn't even touch on through the review episode. I don't think we even touched on it, where the midfielders kick goals. So
yes,
of course Cottrell, Cottrell of course had 2 goals, but I know Paddy Cripps.
Yep.
I'll go through quickly. So Cottrell of course kicked 2, Blake Acres 1, Paddy Cripps 1, Sam Doherty 1, Cunningham 1, but he's probably more as that forward role. Adam Chera 1. Like these are midfielders where, when we're playing well, midfielders kick goals. And it was just on the weekend. On the weekend, it was damaging. And when the midfielders are impacting the scoreboard as well, not just with the ball, but impacting the scoreboard, know we're on. And there's a certain player that wasn't in that list of names that, I mean, this is a bit of a spoiler for my best on ground later on, but there's a certain that I didn't touch on then, who's going to have an absolute blinder on the weekend. But okay, so now we'll move on to the, a pretty big matchup, which is, of course, the Ruckman. So we'll start off with the key matchup, which I think will be the case on the weekend that we'll be seeing. And it's, of course, Mark Pittonet up against Max Gawn. And I think with Pitto, it's a big opportunity for him to really step up to the plate and smack Gawn for a home run, because I think with Pitto, he's probably the one Ruckman really in the competition that can really match up well against Gawn. I think last week against Collingwood, when Gawn, of course, played against Cameron and Cox, I think they worked quite well together to beat him. But Pitto, I think, solely can beat Gawn. That's just my opinion, and we've seen it a lot of times when Pitto comes up against Gawn, like against Melbourne. I think Pitto really matches up well against Gawn, but also, on the other hand, you have a guy like TDK who might be that second ruck role, who, with Harry Mackay being out, he might be that forward position a little bit more. And also, another talking point before I transition to you, Daffy Boy, is who is going to be that second ruck. And we touched on at the start of the episode whether it's going to be Brodie Grundy.
Yep.
I see it differently, where I don't think Grundy comes back in. So, I don't know. But Daffy Boy, what's your opinion on Pitto v Gawn? But of course, TDK is the second ruck, and if you still think it's going to be Grundy coming in as that second ruck, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's another question mark on the Demons this weekend. Van Rooyen obviously suspended, so that puts a little bit of a spanner into the works for them, both forward of the ball and in the ruck. So, yeah, with Pitto, I agree. I think his physicality can definitely match with Gawn. I think, in my opinion, I think Gawn's still the best ruckman in the league, whether all Australian says it or not. I think when he's up and going, he can win them the game. He can win them the game if he's up and about. But yeah, look, you look at it here. We're talking about TDK as the second ruck. He's been dominating the last 8 weeks. I think he's a top 5 ruckman in the league right now based on form. I think he's been absolutely superb. I thought he was superb on the weekend. But yeah, I agree. I think they work well together, him and Pitto. They're different. They bring different, types of games. I think Pitto around the contest is really good in the ruck. I thought he ragdolled McLean on the weekend around, especially throw-ins and stuff like that. And it's going to be hard to ragdoll Max Gawn. But for me, the thing that opens up this game is this second ruck. And I think if they do not bring in Brodie Grundy, TDK will have a field day. He will have a field day if there's the second ruck. It'd have to be Tom McDonald. Are we serious right now? Like Tom McDonald has been a second ruck, but they've got nothing else. So they have to bring. I think they have to bring him in. If they're smart, they bring him in for me. I'm not trying to help him out or anything, but if they're smart, they have to bring Brodie Grundy in because Teddy K will have a field day on Tom McDonald or whoever's the second ruck because he is the first ruck, in my opinion. Like in terms of skill-wise, his mix is improved massively, both in the ruck contest and around the ground. Around the ground, he's very similar to Gawn, where he can do a lot of things. And then Pitto's that kind of ruck, that old style ruck. It works well together. And if Teddy K's the second ruck and Tom McDonald's the second ruck, he's going to give us first use massively, hugely. So if I was Goodwin, for me, you have to play Grundy. What's he there for? Like if you've got Van Rooyen injured, suspended, sorry, I don't think you can rely on Tom McDonald, and you need him up forward. You need Tom McDonald up forward, in my opinion. If their forward line's the issue, you can't be taking him out of the forward line.
Yeah.
To ruck, I know Max is probably 80% ruck time because he's a freak, but when the second ruck comes in, Teddy K could really open the game up for us, especially around the contest.
Yeah. And you kind of think now, I mean, this is not to kind of rub it into the Melbourne supporters. How handy would Luke Jackson be right now?
Oh, God.
How handy would he be right now? But we don't want to rub it in because we've lost some we've made some pretty stupid calls, but I think they got a lot back in return, of course, for Luke Jackson. But see, I see it from the complete other side of it about Grundy. Complete other side. Where, in my opinion, and I'm sure there's a lot of opinions on this, Melbourne have given up on Grundy. He's gone at the end of the year. He's gone.
He's gone.
They are already starting to contact clubs saying, we don't want him. Here you go. But that's where I'm like, there's no way you can risk the weekend playing Grundy this week. There's no way. Because every single other time that he's played the forward line, they've shut the bed. Like, he has not been great up forward, and it hasn't worked. So they need to find another formula. And that's why I see on the complete other side where I would rather, like, if I was Melbourne, I would rather get dominated as a second ruck than have Grundy up forward. That's just my opinion. And it's such an interesting conversation. And how great is it that it's got nothing to do with us? Nothing to do with us. We can just talk about it. But it is a big conversation where that it is going to be Pitto v. Gawn. But that second ruck, I think how I see it is I would almost just rather have Tom McDonald there as that serviceable second ruck and have Bailey Fritsch as that key forward, because that could really be that the matchup for us from our defensive point of view. It could be a little bit unpredictable, and that might help Melbourne. So that's just what I see it from the complete other side. Where if they play Grundy on the weekend and we win, the media will be ripping into Melbourne. So that's just why I just think from a Melbourne point of view, they can't risk Grundy playing forward. And whether they play Gawn as a permanent forward, we don't know. But we've seen this happen throughout the year where it just hasn't worked. As much talk as there was at the start of the season with Grundy and Gawn, that combination, I always had the opinion where it just wouldn't work. I always had that opinion. I'm just like, that won't work for mine. It just won't. And of course, like in hindsight, when you look back, you're like, oh yeah, you can always say, oh yeah, it doesn't work. But I've always had that opinion, and I've kept it quiet because I didn't really want to touch on it. But because it could have easily come back to bite me in the bum, and Gawn could have been a common medalist. But I just don't think it can work. So from that point of view, Daffy Boy, what's your thoughts? Does that change your mind a little bit? I'm sure it wouldn't, because you're pretty convinced that Grundy will play on Friday night. What's your thoughts on also like Fritsch being that main forward? Does it kind of worry you? What's your thoughts?
No, I agree. I completely agree with what you're saying. I completely agree. And, like you said, it's great it's not our problem. We're trying to solve Melbourne's problems here. It's D's chatting right now. But no, it's an important, thing to talk about, because we have to respect the opposition and, the way they go about it. So, yeah, no, I agree. I think Tom McDonald can, but I think our mids are too good to let us dominate the ruck. I think we're way too good in midfield to let us get first use. You got Walsh, Chera, Cripps, Hewitt. You got other guys going through there that dominate even when we don't win the ruck contest. And, you know, for me, I think it really depends if they play Petrarca forward. If Petrarca plays forward on the weekend, they will not bring Grundy in because that'll be another option up forward.
Okay.
But I think he has to play midfield. I don't think they can afford to because it's got no Brayshaw. He played the whole game in midfield after he got injured. That shows to me that he's playing midfield most of the time. But from my opinion, I wouldn't play Grundy if Petrarca's forward because you got another option up forward. Tom McDonald does the second ruck, but like it's a like I get what you're saying with Grundy, but like on the weekend they probably wouldn't have minded him just sitting in the goal square because they just had the way they were kicking inside 50 was to a tall forward and they didn't have a tall forward, isn't it? It's funny.
Yeah.
They were playing like they did have Grundy up forward.
Yeah,
they were playing like they had Grundy up forward or you know whoever they had up forward, and now they don't have Van Rooyen. So they've got one. You know, I wouldn't even count Fritsch as a key forward. I'd count McDonald as a key forward, and then you got Fritsch as the medium kind of key forward. Like, and our defense is pretty handy. Like, you're gonna have to score. You're gonna have to kick a winning score to beat us, in my opinion. Like, we scored 74 on the weekend and won. We scored 60 against them and won. So if we get going offensively, and they have no option ahead of the ball, it's going to be like that's why I'm so confident. I'm pretty confident in this game. I'm not saying it's going to be easy pickings, and they've got great players, right? And they'll find a way, but it's it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Really interesting.
Yeah, and then there's another conversation where it's kind of the elephant in the room where Ben Brown would be perfect right now as well, and he's of course injured. So and I think because that would be perfect because Ben Brown could come back in and Tom McDonald would be that second ruck, and it's not that much of a conversation where right from your point of view, I'm just like Grundy's the only option.
Yes, I know.
Really I know. But I'm just like I'm like, God, if they play Grundy again as a forward, that's worrying. That's really worrying from a Melbourne point of view, and I would love to see that. But it's just such. I think
it's a positive either way.
Yeah,
I think it's a positive either way. But for me, I think to minimise our impact in the middle, I think they have to have a ruck that's actually okay. Because I think Van Rooyen was respectable in the ruck when he's second ruck. So it's you know, Tom McDonald, he's had a battered and bruised season. He's played like 4 games. So if it's a second ruck, they really, you know, it's going to be interesting. They don't really have anyone else, do they? That can play that. They're really lacking tools at the moment. So I think as a back six, we can really hurt them. We can really hurt them. But, you know, good teams find a way. And the Demons are a good team. So we can't really underestimate them in a final.
Yeah. And that's probably the one player that they couldn't afford to lose is Van Rooyen as that second ruck. Knowing this week they're coming up against 2 genuine ruckmen.
Yep.
God, like that is just that they did not want to lose because Van Rooyen, as you said, as actually being quite serviceable in that second ruck role, and he's actually been quite handy up forward as well. But of course, we will now move on to our forward line, which is another conversation in its own. But we'll touch on a bit of a different matchup, and I don't mind it. I want your point of view on it, Daffy boy. But Matt Owies up against Judd McVee. And I think McVee has had, I think it's his first or second year. I think is it his first year? Second year. Okay, because he didn't play much last year, did he? Yeah, so, and then this year he's been pretty much every game.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. And he's well and truly been that small back pocket that has taken that small forward. And I reckon this is the matchup that's probably going to happen. But to touch on Jesse Motlop and Jack Silvani as well, potentially coming back into that forward line. We've touched on it a few times throughout the episode. That's great for us because, as you mentioned, Sauce, the last game he played, he dominated. So I think it would be great to see him coming back into that forward line without Harry Mackay because he might be that sole, he will be that second option down there, and that will definitely help him in terms of impacting the scoreboard. That will help him. But also, my last question before I transition to you, Daffy Boy, is Charlie maybe to dominate on Stephen May. So this was a conversation that the round 22 game when Stephen May went to Charlie Curnow, it was a matchup where we were a little bit excited about because it's like Stephen May doesn't usually play on key forwards like this. And Charlie
Yeah.
Kerner might, if it's a little bit drier, because of course round 22 was a wet game. If it's a dry game, which it looks like it will be 25 degrees on a Friday night, that helps Charlie Kerno. So what's your thoughts on Matt Owes and Judd McVee, of course, as the key matchup, but to touch on those other names, Daffy Boy, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I rate McVee massively. He didn't get in the 22 under 22, but I think he could almost be vice captain of the 22 under 22.
Yeah.
I think he takes on the best small forward every weekend. He takes on the best small forward every weekend. I think he played VFL all last year, just development wise, and then debuted in round 1, and since then he hasn't looked back. So I think he'll be one of those types of small forwards small defenders, that last a long time at the high level, and he's playing for a very, very good football team. And yeah, I think Owes is probably the most dangerous, and we've touched on it. He's evolved his game this season into a goal scoring threat rather than a pressure forward. He isn't the pressure, he provides pressure, but he isn't just like a Lockie Fogarty where he is that pressure forward. He's kicking goals. Despite him, whatever the hell he was doing on the weekend where he tried to handball to Charlie and he should have kicked the goal. He did all the hard part getting out of the back like he usually does, and usually he kicks it. But he finds himself in really, really good spots, and I think McVee has to take him just due to his goal scoring threat, because I think scoreboard pressure is the biggest pressure in AFL football. And Melbourne, the way their scoreboard pressure wasn't enough against Collingwood, led to them losing that game. They had 2 goals with 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. That is just not good enough. So it's scoreboard pressure is enormous. If we can score over 85, I think we can win the game, in my opinion. And I think if Owes is a huge part of this, because we've got Jack Martin out, it's a couple goals gone, in my opinion, that could be, put on the scoreboard, because Jack kicks those goals in those games, and on the weekend he did too and had a massive role. So it's time for, Owes and other smalls to get going. On the whole Sauce thing, I think Sauce is a massive in. He is going to be dying to get out there, play a final for the Carlton Football Club. Obviously a famous name, so he'll be excited. And he was in really good form. I think that Port Adelaide game was one of his best in his career, where he kicked 4 goals, and I think he really just dominated that game. Obviously, we were in form at that. We're still in form, which is really good. But that part of that form, we were just dominant. That game, we were really dominant, and that was off the back of his work. And obviously, Jesse Mollop kicked 4 that day as well. So they're both dangerous and can be goal threats. And backing up my point in terms of scoreboard pressure. If these guys can put on a couple goals each, Charlie kicks 3 or 4, then it starts to get rolling. The mids chip in, and then it just starts to, it's a well-oiled machine, the Carlton forward line. But the last point, Charlie and Stephen May, I think Stephen May was superb on Thursday night. I thought he was absolutely superb. Him and Lever were definitely their best. They scored 60, Collingwood. There's nothing more Stephen May and Lever could have done. They could not have done anything else. Yep. They defended a score that should have been beatable, and they didn't get it done offensively, which was clearly the issue they had. But yeah, like you said, I think it's a tough matchup, Charlie Kerno, to anyone. But I do rate Stephen May. So, I don't think he's going to let him off the leash. But Jake Lever probably takes Sauce, I'd imagine. Then you got TDK up there as well. There's a few tough matchups for Melbourne. And I'm not really sure who maybe they bring in another tall defender to cover it. They got Joel Smith up forward too, so maybe they shift him back. I'm not sure. It's that many questions for Melbourne. They're not all negative. Some of them are positive because it's unpredictability. Joel Smith can play a role down back and up forward. So it's good that we have these guys in. Obviously, our consistency as a 22 has been really good the last 12 weeks, and it's shown. I think consistency wins your games of football when you're not chopping and changing all the time. We've had a few changes, but like I said, I think in the preview, we've had 16 consistent blokes every week.
Yeah.
And then there'll be 4 or 5 or 6 that, swap and change here and there, whether it's omissions or injuries. But that's just the way of football, isn't it? So, it's going to be interesting, Patto. I think it's going to be cool to have Sauce back in the lineup, and as a forward, I don't want him touching the ruck.
Yeah, it's actually a really good point about Stephen May, because even when you touch on there about Tom Niconing going forward, which will most likely happen on the weekend, Stephen May might go straight to TDK. And whenever a TDK is forward, May takes TDK. and then maybe even Jake Lever goes for Charlie Curnow, because Jake Lever probably suits Charlie Curnow a little bit more.
Yeah.
And like a Joel Smith would probably then go to Jack Silvani. I don't know. But when you put it like that, because I actually thought about that when you were saying it then, I was like, maybe you do have a Stephen May going straight to TDK, and you keep Jake Lever on Charlie Curnow, because obviously round 22 it didn't work. It didn't work with May and Charlie Curnow. If it was drier, Charlie Curnow would have dominated the scoreboard. I don't know what he got in the end, but if I quickly go through, 0, Charlie. Oh,
three.
I thought you were saying 0. No, surely not. But no, 2.
Sorry,
2. But I mean, like, it's still a solid enough game. But I completely agree, and I think it's, I don't know, it's once again a big conversation for Melbourne, where it's a unknown sort of formula where, like, May's a little bit vulnerable in that position where he's not going to that lockdown key forward. I mean, he's not going to lock down that key forward. He's going on a guy like Charlie Curnow who can move up the ground, and Silvani could stay back now. TDK can stay back now. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm a Melbourne supporter because I'm a little bit nervous for it, mate. But I mean, I think I'm just more excited because from a Melbourne point of view, you've got to be a little bit nervous, but also a little bit excited because the unpredictability might help them. But also from our point of view, I think our point of view is a little bit more like, if they're a little bit shaky and a little bit nervous about what they're going to do with their plans on the weekend, that's going to help us tremendously. But of course, that is all the lines that we've touched on. But now we have probably the most anticipated segment for the episode, and it's the match predictions. So, Daffy boy, I need your best on ground, your point of difference, and your winner plus margin.
Yeah, it's there's so many names to pick from. For me, I think he's going to be enormous in this game. I was touching on it before. He can break open the game. He broke open the Sydney game, won us the game with a goal assist in a sense on the weekend. I think it's going to be Tom De Koning as best on ground. I think he matches up well against Max. He'll match up extremely well against whoever's the second ruck. He's developing, in front of our eyes. So and for me, the one more thing he adds to his game is just taking consistent marks around the ground. And once he can get that down, Paddy, he's going to be absolutely dominant. And I think he's been dominant the last 9 weeks. He was playing twos at the start of the year. So we finally found a mix that really works for us. And obviously he's best 22. He's too good. He's too talented. So I think he's going to be my best on ground. Point of difference. I think he's been unrewarded the last few weeks. He had 27 pressure acts against the Demons, which no one is talking about. He's going to be the point of difference. He did kick a couple of snags. And it's going to be Lockie Fogarty. He's going to be the point of difference. 27 pressure acts.
That's
on the weekend. 27. No one's talking about it. I saw some tweet or I don't know where I read it. And I was like, what? I was like, 27 pressure acts in a game. I think it was easily the game high. No one touched on it. We didn't even touch on it in the review.
No.
That's how much under the radar he goes. And for me, I think he'll get a couple of snags and, off the back of his pressure work. So, shout out to you, Fog. Hopefully you have a good one. And winner plus margin. I think it's the most interesting one coming out of our mouth, because I think we just pop it out of our brain just like that. But for me, I think I've got Carlton winning. I'm pretty confident in this game. I'm not, don't want to jinx it, but I'm confident. I think we can get to a prelim, and that's exciting to say. It's unbelievable to say. I'm confident in this team. And I think, we've obviously got something to lose, but I think we've got not as much to lose as Melbourne does this weekend. So for me, that's kind of how I've worked out this margin and win. I think we're going to win by 18 points. And I think it's going to be a bit more, not comfortable. It won't be comfortable the whole game.
Yeah.
But I think we're a bit more, the finish will be more comfortable than when we played them last time, and specifically last Friday, because I don't think my heart can take it again. But I think we win, Patto. I'm confident in this team, and they're on the verge of 2 straight exits in a row after a premiership. So pressure's on them. Pressure is on them massively. Our pressure's done. Winning on Friday was our pressure. Tick off the win. Tick off the finals win. We've got momentum. They just lost when they should have won. Bring it on.
Yeah, well, because even the review, we were touching on it. We're like, we just needed to get through that game with a win. We just needed to move on to the semifinals. Yep. Of course, you still want to win. Of course, we will be shattered if we lose. But
yeah, of course.
And there was a comment on our review. I don't know if you saw it, but there was a comment. It was directed at me saying that I am apparently already looking towards next year. Now, my point of view is Carlton supporters need to just try and take it in where we just want a fucking final. We just want an elimination final. The first final series we've been in a decade. First finals win in a decade. We are now in a semi-final where versing Melbourne at the MCG, our home ground. We can easily win this game. Easily. Yeah, but if we lose, you take that experience. This is a young group where you have this group for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
The next 5 years is where you take it in, where you had that finals experience, a big crowd of 95,000. You're playing once again this week against 90,000 at the MCG on a Friday night semi-final. Win, you go into a prelim. Now, if you take that experience into next year, that's going to be massive for this group. And that's why I think it was, I mean, we don't really touch on a lot of comments because we do get a lot of comments throughout the episode, throughout the season. But I think there was a little bit out of line where I don't think it was the comments that I was saying. I wasn't saying where I'm already looking towards next year. I'm looking towards the fucking prelim in a couple of weeks, Daffy Boy, where we get past the D's this week.
Sure. But it's for sure though. But like I said at the start of the episode, why can't we win the premiership? Why? There's no reason why we can't win the premiership.
Yeah.
If we win this weekend, I'm sniffing.
Yeah.
I'm sniffing a cup.
Yeah.
I'm sniffing a grand final berth because once again, if we win this, we've got a team that's under pressure. They've choked in these moments. We've got nothing to lose. And I think I agree with you what you're saying. This experience will put us in good stead for years to come. We're focusing on now, of course. Of course, we're focusing on that now.
Yeah.
But this is huge. Having this high stakes is massive. And we haven't had it for 10 years. And on the weekend, we had the high stakes. We had our season on the line. In the last quarter of the game, we won it. We weren't at our best. We weren't at our best, and we won it. We can fix those issues, Patto, and I agree with you. I think we can get it done.
Yeah, and that's why the pressure is immensely on Melbourne. Last week, the pressure wasn't on us. We probably shut the bed in a sense, but we still got the job done. This we're versing a team that, as you said, they're coming up like I didn't even think of it like that, but I actually now it's like shit. It's actually true because 2021, of course, they won the premiership. 2022, they were out in straight sets, losing to Brisbane in a semi-final. This year, they've lost to Collingwood. They're now versing Carlton. They're versing Carlton at the MCG off a finals win. Every single Carlton supporter that is able to will be there on Friday night.
There will be, mark my words, there will be way more of us than them. For sure. For sure. There's no way. If it was Melbourne versus anyone else, it would have been sold out. It's sold out because it's Carlton. It's a common denominator, isn't there, right now? And I think there'll be more of us there, and we've got to absolutely make it like our home game. Because that'll frighten them a bit. I think it frightened them a bit against Collingwood, in my opinion. That first quarter, Pies fans were up and about. You know, we don't talk about Collingwood positively much, but I think it was their fans got into their head a bit. They were a bit deer in headlights at the start of the game, and Bobby Hill got 2 easy goals. And what happened on the weekend? We got 2 easy goals in 2 minutes, and that opened up the game. Yeah. Opened up the game. On to your predictions, mate.
And I mean, I'll say one more point before I'll move on to the predictions, and that's why it's so big with a big club with a big supporter base. I was, of course, nervous because of the finals pressure, but it's that first 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, calm.
Yep.
Because they play in front of 90,000 every week.
Every week, yeah.
And that's exactly what Collingwood would do. Melbourne don't do. If Melbourne were playing against St Kilda on the weekend, they wouldn't get more than 60 at the MCG. And it's just, that's the difference. And it's why every single Carlton supporter that is there on Friday night, you scream as loud as you can because the noise reflects well on Carlton, but might reflect badly on Melbourne players as well. So insane. But I will touch on my match predictions. A bit of a ramble there from my from my but best on ground. I've touched on it. I did change it. It was Paddy Cripps, but it's going to be Sam Walsh, mate. Sam Walsh is going to dominate on the weekend. Best on ground. I'm calling about 32 touches and a goal. He's going to impact the scoreboard. That's who I was going to touch on earlier. There was one certain name who didn't impact the scoreboard. He is going to kick a goal. It's going to be an important goal. I can see it. I can sense it. But point of difference, I had him as my best on ground last week. He didn't perform as well as I would have expected him to. But point of difference, David Cunningham. He is going to be the point of difference. You touched on Lockie Fogarty. Similar player with of course Cunningham, and he did kick an important goal last week as well. So I just think that with him, it's a big chance for him to step up once again on the final stage. He's that finals player that we see, and he's just like he's really good for that final stage. Winner plus margin. Now, I've tipped Carlton.
Okay. Tick.
You touched on there about a bit of a nervous sort of you don't want to go through another nervous game because last week, of course, we won by 6 points. The Melbourne game, we won by 4 points earlier on in the year. Carlton by 2 points at the MCG. It is going to be. I'm sensing that it'll be a minute left, and I reckon the D's would be like Carlton supporters would be like, oh, that's like shattering, but that's okay. D's are moving on to the prelim next minute out of nowhere. The super sub. Paddy Dow, I'll go off your super sub. Paddy Dow is going to come on and kick the winner. He's going to come on the fourth quarter. So he's going to have 12 touches in the last quarter. He's going to be the point of difference, but he's not really my point of difference, but he's going to be the point of difference in that last few minutes because Paddy Dow will kick the winning goal and the Blues will win by 2 points. But Daffy Boy, before we wrap up the episode, is there anything else you would like to touch on?
No, mate. We've I think it's been a good episode. Getting a lot off our chest. I think, especially about our opposition, seeing how they go about it. I think that's kind of exciting. Talking about both teams' ins and outs, because I think our ins and outs are pretty self-explanatory, but theirs aren't for sure. So, it's going to be interesting, Patto. Let's just get it done. Let's just get the job done. And it's I'm a little bit nervous, of course, but I think there's just something about this season. I feel like something about this story, and I don't think it's going to end this weekend. Yeah,
I completely agree. I think you've said it perfectly. I don't think as Vossi has said a lot of times throughout the season, the job's not done. It's not done. No. Last week, great win against the Sydney Swans elimination final, but It's not done yet. It's not done. So, well wrapped up. And of course, to all the viewers and listeners out there, make sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're watching on, whether it's Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, whatever platform you listen to us on, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It's been a great season for us at Baggers Chat, but also within the Carlton Football Club. It's been a great season. Then next season will be a big year for us at Baggers Chat as well. But make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on every single platform you see us on. But to you, Daffy Boy, and to all the blue baggers out there, up the baggers!
Come on.